Hello, I'm Toycat, and a surprising number of people like the genre of walking through a city on YouTube because you get to see what it's like to be in a city without being in that city. And so today, let me show you one of the weird quirks of London. I'm here in the very east of the city, near Woolwich Arsenal, and this is the Woolwich Foot Tunnel. And it's one of those weird quirks. Even I just find myself being wondered, and I find an itch being scratched to myself as I do it. So today, Colby is here with me as well.
Hello.
And we're gonna go for a walk through the tunnel in the first walk and talk, but with Kobe. So what's the deal with tunnels, Kobe?
I don't. Oh, you know the thing about tunnels is that they bring you to places without being seen. So we could sneak somewhere. Or do you mean the tunnels beneath the Thames in particular?
I did mean the tunnels, but I mean actually though, you know, I did not clarify, so your answer is entirely valid. Yeah, excuse me for
the tunnels beneath the Thames. You know, you when you go to London, it's like, oh yeah, the tube, all the like landmarks and stuff. But no one talks about the tunnels beneath the Thames. You can literally walk under the river.
You literally can walk under the river. It's only in 3 or 4 places. Like there's only 2 specially built ones, right?
Yeah.
But that's what makes them so special.
One that you might die in.
There's another couple you might die in, actually. I mean, there's another couple you might die in, and then there's another like 5 you will die in. Like depending on how you count tunnels. So this is the Woolwich Foot Tunnel, and it's just so bizarre. Like there's this area in the middle of what is effectively nowhere. Like we're in zone 3, maybe for London. Like it's actually quite dense urban planning, whatever. But like for London, this is very not dense. And then there's just this random looking building. It looks like some very quirky house or like a tea shop or something. I don't know. Like it looks like a very old timey thing. But what it actually is it's a foot tunnel built a long time ago, 1912, did you say?
Yes, 1912.
1912. And again, the weird thing about it to me is not just that it's a foot tunnel beneath the Thames, one of only 2 you can actually walk through. Oh, not only is it interesting that it's a foot tunnel below the Thames, but it's also it's one of the very few crossings of the Thames that goes this far east. And so it theoretically has a bunch of utility, but the reality is it had utility in 1912 when it was built for dock workers to go on the other side of the river. But nowadays, it's like so close to empty, and it just kind of exists as a relic of the past. Like you wouldn't build this today, but the fact that it exists today still is interesting. You know, I think it's interesting. Actually, do you think they would build this today, or we just not thought about it? Like maybe we just haven't.
I think nowadays they just like built one of these tunnels. Like they've actually built like many of these tunnels in like the last century, but they've just all been filled with tube lines. Because like if you look at the map, like tons of tubes go underneath the river. This is basically the same concept, but you don't put a rail line in, you just like let people walk through it.
The Jubilee line crosses the river 4 times in the space of like 8 stops. It's there's a place between, I think it's Canning Town and Canada Water. Every tube stop crosses the Thames from the previous one. Like that's how common it is to cross. But you're right. Yeah, we use it for cars, or we use it for trains now. Because who wants to walk under the river? I think I think in the modern age, like again, people don't like to walk places, but we could probably like revitalize their interest if we did something like this again. We're like, there's this really cool new tunnel, not for cars, not for trains, not even for bikes. Although people don't listen to the no bikes rule, which I find funny. Actually, there's a wider conversation. You know, this tunnel's interesting on the tunnel level, but oh god, we really are the only people in here. This is very spooky. Yeah, there's no one, right?
Yeah, no one that you can see at the moment.
This is the furthest east underground Thames crossing, and no one is using it because it doesn't have much use, and that makes it so much more interesting. But yeah, the more interesting thing about this is the fact that there is no cycling allowed here, and if there were people here, I could prove that even though there is a no cycling rule, let me show you on the ground here, no cycling and keep left. First of all, I mean, you're gonna try and make me keep left? How about this? How about this, Greenwich Borough Council?
Yeah, you under citizen's arrest.
But not only. Oh yeah, we actually do have to get to the left now because there are bikes coming, which is the other rule. But like, so the official rule here is no cycling. But as you're about to see, like, there's something called official rules. Oh my god, fast too. Man, I'm jealous of that speed. That is. But the official rule here is no cycling. That is what it says. But at the same time, cycling is very much, it is not permitted, but it is allowed. There's a fun distinction between those two things. I was playing around with Kobe with it earlier. It's weird to think about, but there are so many laws we have that are just not followed in practice. And like, you know, you see people not following red lights in front of police all the time. If they're on a bike, it's fine. Like there's a trillion things like this. And
Unless you're Andrew, and then they enforce the law on you.
Scooters, unless you're Andrew, or incredibly unlucky. Like, I know there's an interesting thing about things like this where people break the law as part of their daily commute. Like, those guys probably come here every day. There are people that have to break the law, well, not have to, but they choose to break the law every day. And they don't have any consequences. And if you do something long enough without breaking the law, does that kind of become the de facto law? Like, one of the interesting weird quirks of British property law is squatters' rights. If you squat on a property for long enough and receive mail, you do have the right to reside in it for as long as you need to, you know? Like, that's why people get so iffy about having, you know, like either homeless people or like having tenants that don't pay their rent, because if they live there for long enough, they have permission to, or implied permission, I think it's called. And I think that approach to the law is really interesting because it does effectively solidify something that you know, like that. An example would be like in China, everyone thinks it's an authoritarian state, but it's really one of the most liberal places on earth, unless the government is coming to town, in which case it starts to crack down and they want to make it look like it's one of the most authoritarian places. Like, look how much power we have. And I think that model is one of the easiest ways to give people freedom, but it's also not true freedom if it can be taken away from you at any moment. Like, maybe we're going on a freedom rant and we need to put on our American hats and get in a truck and hold some guns while we do this. But I think the concept of, like, if you are doing something and no one actually cares and it's not harming someone, then does it being against some rule somewhere in a book, or in this case, written down very regularly on the path? We're the only people in the tunnel again.
Oh yeah.
That's weird. But it's interesting because I bet every day there are people who walk this tunnel who are annoyed at those cyclists. Is their annoyance more valid than the people cycling? What do you reckon, Kobe? Whose opinion is more valid? The people annoyed at the cyclists, or the cyclists just trying to get somewhere fast?
I guess probably the people who are annoyed, because they follow the rules.
Yeah, yeah, that's why we default to it. I think, like, that's why it's easy to make, like, so many people like the whole, oh yeah, every law in the world is designed to make someone money, and therefore you might as well break all the laws all the time. And I do think that is definitely extreme, but also the problem with rules and laws is like how slow they change and how fast humans comparatively change. Like when the rule about e-scooters being illegal was written, e-scooters not only didn't exist, regular scooters didn't exist. Actually, no, wait, have I ever shown you there's that petrol e-scooter that Marie Curie used to ride on?
No, I never. No, how long ago was that?
Like the 1800s. Like it wasn't called a scooter. It just had the exact same design. Like the motor was in the front wheel, the fuel tank was in the back, and then there was two handlebars with like a rev thing. And because it was so long ago, you didn't need a license for it because licenses didn't exist.
Yeah.
And the only real like way they kept it in check was only the rich could afford them, so it was fine. But I find that interesting that, like, yeah, you didn't need a driving license when cars first came around because the concept didn't exist yet. But how long after you have cars do you need driving licenses? And how long after you create a tunnel that's made for people and then those people stop living and working here because, again, this is 108 years old now. 109 is it this year? Yeah. It's a 109-year-old tunnel. And I think it's interesting to think about how often the behavior of the people in the tunnel has changed. At first it was some workers coming, it was a commuting tunnel, then it became a leisure tunnel. But now every single time I hear someone talk about this tunnel, it says a great cycling connection. But that is in spite of the fact that it, one more time, it explicitly, repeatedly states, no cycling. And so, I don't know, it's one of those conflicts without resolution. Like, no matter what you do, one of those groups of people is unhappy. Maybe what they should do is they should have half of it be for feet and half of it be for bikes. Divide it down the middle. And then you cycle one way, you walk the other. That wouldn't work for anyone, actually. You'd only get one way to work, and you'd have to
take the ferry back.
Look at this, by the way. The thing is unaligned. This is, by the way, one of the ugliest. Like, we went to the other tunnel today. This is the far ugliest of the two. Like, it's just so gross everywhere. It's
Greenwich Tunnel is the best tunnel.
Whereas they were taking notes from the Northern Line when they designed this one. That's what I reckon. But yeah, it's really. What's also really interesting. It's so old. Like elevators are actually older than escalators. That's not an intuitive fact, but it is true. But it's so old that it's made from wood. Like, look at this. This is just so weird to me. Like a wooden elevator. And because it's wood, it's been graffitied. Dennis was here, or Divis. Dennis. That is Dennis.
Yeah.
But Dennis spelled like bizarrely without two N's. Or maybe he can't spell his own name.
You missed the little lines here.
You know, graffiti is hard.
Or maybe it's Davis.
Oh, it could be Davis, yeah.
Spelled in a weird way.
It could be, like, look at the M&M there, Niham, anarchy sign. People have a whole bunch of opinions here, and they overlap. There's no cycling, no animal fouling. Imagine if someone did let their dog poop here and be like, well, that's probably in the rules. Like, who needs to see a sign for that?
You can't loiter.
You can't what?
Loiter? You
No,
can't
loiter.
stay still.
Oh, there's no sign that says no e-scootering though, so therefore, implicitly, it must be okay. And here we are, on the other side of the river, a short, oh god, that was a full 12 minutes. It actually feels longer than 12.
Well, we started recording before we entered the tunnel.
That's true, yeah, 12 minutes from one side of the Thames to this, the other side of the River Thames. And again, this is all the way out, not in the corner of London, but outside the main development. That is Canary Wharf, which is considered like East London, the centre of East London. So we're east to the east of London, and we get this, a lovely little view. Thank you for taking this delightful walk with me, Kobe.
You're welcome.
Do you think the internet's going to think I'm weird for like having a conversation where I said 90% of the words, or do you think they're going to think that you were just, you know, like how do you think that's going to go down? Is it going to be like my video where you showed up, or is it like, what's that?
I guess you showed up in my videos. So,
So you showed up in mine.
is this a collab?
I would say it's a collab. Wait, it's only a collab if you shout out your own channel at the end.
Oh, should I shout out my own?
Shout it out, go.
Go, if you're interested in history or like watching Andrew walk through London with me, you can check out Kobean History. It's Kobean and then history at the end.
KO bean.
Yeah.
You knock that bean.
KOB.
Knockout bean.
Yeah.
Knockout bean history. That's where you need to go. Okay, thank you for watching. We have to get home from here. It's gonna be a little bit of a journey, but we'll have a good time doing it, and that's what matters. See you all next time. Goodbye.